so much pressure on ourselves to follow this A to Z trajectory, the linear trajectory that society has somehow set up for us. So I think like all that to say, my advice for my 18-year-old self is like,
you have the beginning, middle and end of a book. We have no control over the beginning. We have no control over the end. We have that massive chunk in the middle, and that's where the climax happens. That's where all the really exciting stuff happens.
Hi, Edwina, how are you?
hi Ellie, I see you're in the dead of winter.
I am. I love wearing my scarf, nice and cozy. How are you doing?
Here, good. I just moved back from France to the United States, so enjoying the summer and the summer of protests. And I'm actually in Portland, Oregon, so on the west coast of the US.
Cool, so it's really great to have you here on the video today. And of course, I'm excited to kind of probe you a little bit and get some cool insights. But before we start, I guess there's probably a lot of people that don't know who you are. So if you want to give us a wee bit of background, how we kind of crossed paths and what you do now.
Definitely. So I, with my best friend, Hannah, who is English, started a company that's based in Paris, but really helps young people all over the world. And we're called Au Pair Au Paris. And so we help au pairs and young expats kind of acclimate to their new environments. A lot of the people that we help are Anglophones coming from Australia, England, the United States to move to France. And we started in Paris but have grown. And we help them kind of find community, find resources that can help them just understand the culture, understand how to make friends, and have the best experience that they possibly can as au pairs. Because this grew out of a terrible experience that I had as an au pair back in 2013, maybe 2014, not many years ago, but quite a number of years ago. And I realized that there weren't enough resources out there to help young people acclimate and gain community. So me and my best friend, who we met as au pairs, decided to do something about it, and that's kind of what happened with Au Pair Au Paris.
That's so cool. It's like a typical entrepreneur story, eh? Something happens, something sparks, and then boom, business. What would you say are your core values and morals, and kind of where do you think they come from?
Core values and morals definitely come from the family that I grew up in. My parents always pushed me to be very, very curious. So curiosity is definitely in there on the top pillar of like my core values, because my parents were very much laissez-faire. They never were the type to say, I have the answer, it's the end all be all. Their response was always, I'm not sure, this is kind of how I feel, but go out there and ask people what they think. And in that regard, whenever I have a question about life or about my life and what I should do, my first instinct is to go out and ask as many people as I can what they think, and then I'm able to make my own decision off of that. And I think that was the best thing that my parents could have ever done, because it made me very autonomous and independent and not tunnel visioned. Like, I recognize that there's many different ways to approach things, and it's cool to be able to decide that and not have had parents that kind of push things on me. Without being too broad, I definitely have a social justice mindset, and I wanted to say equality, but that just sounds so broad. But I really think that it's a heart thing. For me, a core value is just feeling and doing what's right in your heart. And for me, that just goes back to people and individuals and doing what's right for people on an individual basis based on my heart. And that changes. It's really hard to generalize my moral compass, but yeah.
Can you think of a time where you actively lived out your morals or values, even though it was tough, or perhaps you even lived against them without realizing? Is there any kind of examples of either obviously really pursuing them or obviously accidentally living against them?
Accidentally living against them. That's actually a really good question, because back when I first moved out, when you first move out, you definitely have this some sort of like an identity. You're always reformulating your identity in life. But I think that big phase is when you first move out for the first time and you come to know the world on your own terms for the first time. And that was definitely for me when I became an au pair. It was the first time that I was abroad by myself, facing this other culture. So I definitely at first found myself in a group of friends where they I met them my first week or two, and then I kind of became part of their group. And I just didn't recognize the same values as them, but because I didn't have anyone else around, I definitely stuck to those people more or longer than I should have. But that so naturally happens. Like Hannah, my co-founder, and I always talk about that. Like when you first move to a new town, you kind of cling on to whoever you can meet because you don't have any other grounds to ground yourself. And so you're just grateful to have met anyone. And it's very much, yeah, and it's very much Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Yeah. And my need at the time was to just meet someone. And then after that, I could reflect on values. So I think going through that though, you look retrospectively and realize what happens. And then at the end of like a couple months, I reevaluated, I made new friends, I met Hannah, and like obviously things changed. But I think it's not, for me, I would take that as a learning lesson, and I definitely got better at meeting friends later on in life. Like now I'm finding community again in my new town, and I'm much better at recognizing who I link with in terms of values, who I want to continue like a friendship relationship with right off the bat. But you really can't fault yourself for that when you're like in that for the very first time. I think that happens a lot.
What tips would you give to people that have either like probably already been through that once at least, like, you know, not maybe first time au pairs, but people in general that have moved, that are moving on in life into something else and are scared of falling into that trap again? Like what advice would you give them in terms of confidence and actually saying no for a little bit longer if it means, you know, sticking true to yourself? Would you say as you get older it's more important to kind of fly solo until you find the right people, or would you recommend going through that a few times?
It's definitely hard to fly solo, but I always give the au pairs in our community the advice of like go wide, not deep in the beginning, because when you meet only a few people and you have strong friendships or like quality or quantitative friendships and that you spend a lot of time with them in the beginning, you don't give yourself the opportunity to meet a lot of different people and to have a lot of different options. I think like the best friendships come when you have this mindset of abundance of like, oh, I have so many people that I have the right to make the choice of like who I mesh with the best. And something that I personally do to keep me aligned is like continuously write my goals. Actually, this is a good reminder. I have to print out my goals. I wrote them the other day and I didn't print them, but I usually have them like on my office wall just to remind me of my goals for the year and then who I am. And like even now for my Portland goals, like to meet people, I try to find people through communities that I'm already interested in, like theater, singing, yoga, etc. And I really don't just go out and meet anybody anywhere. I'm very intentional about the types of people that I'm trying to meet and those communities and environments that I'm meeting them in. So I think that's the best way to meet people is through groups and not so forcefully sometimes. And then, you know, I keep myself busy with my own personal projects when I am feeling a little like I'm flying solo. And I think that's good to have those habitual practices of like reminding yourself, when I'm by myself, I can also do fun things. And that's, you know, the best thing.
Yeah, I definitely think as well with the whole quarantine period, everyone's got used to their own company and is capable of sitting down and making themselves enjoy something by themselves. So no, I really like that. I like the fact that you said the word intention, because I think that is a lot of what, like, that is behind a lot of things these days, like actually knowing what you like doing, and you're bound to find at least one person within a group of 10 doing the same activity that has similar interests to you. Is pretty much guaranteed, I'd say. Yeah. But, what's one thing that you'd be like, if I could say this to my 18-year-old me, this is what it is?
I think we all come from such different backgrounds. We're all in such different waves of energy that we're all here to learn different lessons in life. But if I were to give myself advice when I was 18 is like, trust the journey. And this is why I love asking older people for advice, because they just have the foresight of, or the, not even foresight, what's the opposite of foresight? The hindsight, there you go, to say, yeah, when I was 18 and I was deciding between taking an internship for a summer and traveling, backpacking Europe for a summer, obviously I'm going to backpack Europe. But when you're 18, you think to yourself, oh my gosh, there's this pressure, I have to climb up the ladder and, you know, get this great career and have this and that. But it's like, it's all about mindset, you have to realize that we're young, and you have to trust the journey. Like, just because you skipped a year or took a year to be an au pair when you were 24, 26, whatever, doesn't mean you're going to be set back for 10 years in your career. Like, we put so much pressure on ourselves to follow this A to Z trajectory, the linear trajectory that society has somehow set up for us. So I think, like, all that to say, my advice for my 18-year-old self is, like, screw the linear trajectory of a career. It's so stupid, and just don't worry about it and live the way you want to live, as long as you're fiscally responsible most of the time and you're a good person. Like, you're doing it right.
I think I'm going to get that on a t-shirt. Screw the linear journey. That's like such a I feel like you're going to be quoted on that. It's going to be a hashtag. What are some of the key things that you have discovered about the way the world works and your place in it, just from the work you've done in Au Pair Au Paris, or any kind of work you've done with people? Like, what have you figured? Like, what are your little insights into?
Yeah. One is a quote from one of my favorite musicals, Hamilton, which is, "If you stand for everything, you fall for nothing."
I think it's, if you stand for nothing, you fall for everything.
Yeah, I knew it. I was like, did I stand for nothing, you fall for everything.
Yeah, that's right. Because I was like, hold on, it's not right.
Basically, we learned that having a small business where you manage a huge community of young people, like, everyone's not going to agree with you, but it's better to be controversial and stick up for yourself and your values and what you believe in as a company and as a brand than try to please everyone. And that certainly came about, that's been our mission and our mindset since the beginning, because Hannah and I are not fake people. Like, we're not going to try to incorporate people who just don't share our values of community and other things. This is like an all-inclusive community that we lead, and that certainly came up again with Black Lives Matter. Like, we are very vocal about that. We made donations toward things. We encourage people to support Black businesses. We're still doing that. Yeah, we don't tolerate people who just are not online with who we are as a community. So that's a huge lesson that we've learned, because definitely you feel the pressure to want to include everyone. But at the end of the day, it's not worth it, because it's about who you are, and it doesn't feel natural to just like want to please everyone. That's just like fake social media. Another thing that I learned, kind of almost a little bit contradictory to what I just said about wanting everyone to be online with our moral values, everyone is on a different path of life, and everyone has a different lesson to learn and a different time period of when they learn certain things. And like, I also have to accept that as well, that like, sometimes I want to have hard conversations, or sometimes I want to talk about this or that, but the person on the receiving end might not be ready for that. They might not be ready for how deep I want to go, but they might be ready for a smaller piece of the puzzle. And meeting people where they are is the best thing that you can do if you want to have any sort of productive conversation. And that goes for something social justice related, but that also just goes for life in general. Like, on a business level and on a friendship level, you can't just project your own beliefs and opinions and plans onto other people. You have to, life is a collaborative experience, and people are here to meet and work with other people. So you have to learn patience and to listen actively.
I really like what you just said there about the whole projection thing, because I think it's so easy for us to like victimize ourselves if someone yells at you for something, whereas actually, and you take it personally, it's actually half the time it's because they've had something else going on, or they've had a bad experience with a similar situation before, and they just don't know how to deal with it, or their mind's clouded by something else, that it just comes across that they're angry at you and they're not. And you know, sometimes you might have been in it, I don't know if you have, I've definitely have been in a situation where, you know, someone might accuse you of behaving a certain way or doing something, but it's actually them. That's what they're doing in their life, but they don't want to accept it, you know, and it's kind of putting it onto you. And I think you've got to be so cautious of that. And that again comes down to meeting people where they're at and not taking things personally. So yeah, I really like that quote that you said there.
Yeah.
Like, how do you think we know when we are on the right path, or like heading in the right direction for ourselves? Like, how did you know that Au Pair Au Paris was something that you, like, once it got going, that it was actually something that you wanted to keep doing?
Yeah, first of all, I don't think you ever know. I mean, like on a daily basis, I ask myself, am I on the right path, you know? And what I do to help just calm those thoughts is just remain grateful. Like if anyone follows me on Instagram, I only post about gratitude and like things like that. I'm always asking people what they're grateful for, and it's about abundance mindset, like I was saying earlier, and just like remembering that I have my two legs and two arms. Like I have an amazing apartment, and like I have an amazing roommate, and just those daily rituals of reminding of myself of what I do have, that helps me. And having also daily practices of like I try to meditate every day, or like try to wake up at a certain hour every day, and like have my little routines.
Yeah,
I'm very much a routine person. I think those things ground me, because life can get really overwhelming. Like all of us, I'm sure you included, have been like, is this career right for me? Should I be traveling in like France? You know, should I be doing this or that? And so just being able to have practices that calm those overwhelming thoughts is really, really important. But in terms of Au Pair Au Paris, like I think once you do have those routines, you and lists and goals, you're able to know yourself and your vision better. Like we were just talking about vision boards. I make vision boards all the time, and those help me realize what I want and then break it down into a monthly, weekly, daily goal list, because I see the overall picture of where this is going. But like it's important to have the big picture and the big vision, and then be able to break that down into your morning ritual, morning habits, and like not overwhelming yourself being like, I didn't, you know, accomplish world peace today. I had a good conversation with my neighbor about you know. It's about small, being grateful for the small things that you accomplish on a daily basis that lead into the bigger vision.
I love that so much, like the whole world peace thing. Like I think everyone, including myself, is definitely guilty of thinking, you know, I didn't achieve something bigger, whereas actually, if you, like you said, the incremental things along the way are the small wins. You know, they're the most important thing, because you can't actually get to the big thing. You can't build a house without the bricks, right?
Exactly.
So I just literally said that because there is a brick house opposite my window, and I thought it's a good analogy. That'll work.
I was like, oh, that's my New Zealand expression. Love.
Yeah. So has your work, like, I mean, you've kind of touched on this already, but what has your role in Au Pair Au Paris, or just kind of your journey so far, taught you about who you are, like, and what you're capable of?
It's a total like zero to hero story. I started out as an au pair who was completely taken advantage of, and then I turned that around to create a community and to help people avoid that type of situation that I was in. So I think I could have, you know, run away from that situation, been and played the victim card and been like, oh, pairing sucks, never do it, like French people suck, this and that. But I stayed and I fought it out, and like I learned French, and it's a totally different ending to my story, and the story is still unraveling, obviously. But yeah, it's about creating your own story. Like you are the narrator of your own life and story. And with APOP in general, that goes for the business and the community as well. Like you're constantly changing, you're constantly retelling your story and deciding how you want to accentuate certain details of your story. And so just trying to remain positive and grateful and tell your story the best way that you can. And you're also always changing. Like APOP for us in the beginning is so different from what it is now and what it's becoming. Like you have to accept, or I have to accept, that I'm not the same person that I was when we started 3 or 4 years ago. And there are certain things that I want to do now that we can do, that I'm really grateful for, that I'm excited about. And then there's certain things that we used to do that I just like don't love doing as much anymore. So that, just not getting tied on a business level and on a personal level, not getting tied to one definition of yourself and of your business, like accepting the fact that we're constantly evolving, and that story should also constantly be evolving.
I love that so much. That's like, there's a word we use here, it's called juicy. This is what I mean, it's not called juicy. Juicy, we say juicy. I've only recently learned it, but it's like when something's like full of like goodness. I only learned that this year when I started working in sales, and my office team members would be like, juicy, if something was like really good to hear. So I'm just going to say that what you just said was very juicy. That might be really weird in America. I don't know.
Yeah, it's so funny. Yes. Usually the tweets will just be like, yes, and we snap.
What kind of international causes or global causes do you personally feel quite passionate about? Because I know there are hundreds. What kind of advice would you give around finding bigger things that people are, could be connected to? Because I think, you know, a lot of issue with like not feeling like you've got much direction is when you don't feel like there's anything bigger you're part of or can contribute to. You know, if you get a bit stuck inside your own head, or might not know what you're capable of because you've only ever seen a certain type of world. So I think, you know, it's important for us to look outwards and think, okay, if I'm passionate about that cause, what can I do back here that's aligning with my values and what I'm good at that can contribute to this cause? And it gives you that sense of like global connection. Like, what kind of causes do you feel connected to, and how do you kind of work towards them in your own way?
Yeah, I think just tying what I just said about accepting the evolution of your own story, just also accepting the evolution of your own beliefs and what you're fighting for currently. Like, we can't fight for it all. There's so many things that I believe in, but I have to be conscious of where I'm living, the environment around me, what people are more, where I can meet people. You know, if I was living in, like, let's say Alabama, where guns are just like highly supported and part of the culture there, I'm not gonna come, you know, a fire with my gun control like beliefs. Like, I think that it's very much about what I believe and also about the community around me, what people are ready for, and what that looks like. So like when I'm in France, for example, because I try to live between France and the US, it's a very different social justice environment than it is in the United States. Yeah. So I think just having kind of a set of ideas about what you believe in on a social justice level or whatever that may be, and then picking one to focus on. That's personally what I do, because otherwise, like we just said, you can't fight for everything, or you can't fight, believe, or stand for everything, because then you'll fall for nothing.
No, if you stand for nothing, you fall
for nothing, you fall for everything.
How much of a favorite?
Oh my goodness, it still makes sense for me the other way. Whatever. To tie it all together, you have to go back to your story, because you're the most unique person there is, and like, you have such a unique story, every single person, and you have to sit there and think, what makes me unique, what attaches to my personal story that affects me, and why. Because yeah, it's like all fine and dandy to support certain movements, but it's also always stronger when you can tie a personal story into your fight for whatever movement. So I think, like, fight the good fight and like write down your social justice values or whatever that may be, but also look at your own self and your own story and see how you can tie that into what you're fighting for.
I like that, because I think, like you said, there's so many causes, and again, depending on where you live, like, you know, some people watching this might be living in a situation where they don't agree with what's going on around them and can't necessarily move away from it. But I think in that instance, you know, it's important to at least put a plan together in your head of what you would change and what what you want to see, and then you could be the one that starts it, you know, if no one else does. Which is always exciting. Was there anything else that you think that could contribute to this conversation that might help people that are either on a pathway and kind of know where they're going but want to kind of diversify their mindset, or people that have absolutely no clue? Is there anything else that you can add that's juicy to the conversation?
Honestly, this conversation was so great. Like, thank you for doing this and for creating the community that you're creating, because I think it's just so important to have conversations. And like, if anything, check yourself. Like, I talked so much today about how I believe, how I go into the world, but there's also this whole part behind that where I have to be receptive to the things that are going on around me, and like listen and check myself and realize that sometimes I'm wrong, sometimes I have to change my mind, sometimes I have to apologize. And I think that that is just as important as it is to do the work and set the goals and do your vision board and things like that. So that's pretty much all. The rest I have to add.
Love it so much. Juice. Love it. So good. Awesome stuff. Well, we did pretty good then. So as a wrap up, where can people find you? I know you've said the brand, but like any particular things to watch out for? Or
so we are Au Pair Au Paris. You can find us at aupaireauparis.com. We have different resources on there. I work with coaching people to help them go abroad and do a gap year. And then we have a community on our website and on our Instagram, Au Pair Au Paris.
Good. And your personal one?
And my personal one is Edwina_Koch. You can follow me, and I'm just ridiculous on there.
You're roller skating, yoga, handstanding. Like,
yes, I have to get back into that.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love it. Your Instagram's awesome. I love it. Thanks for joining me today. I'm really excited to see if anyone reaches out to you, or if if they have any questions. I'm sure that you'll be really happy to answer them. But yeah, thanks for being here, and all the best with your with your life in the States.
Thank you for having me, Ellie. I can't wait to see where this goes. And like, I've been following your community forever. Thank you for doing your takeovers on our platform. So
yeah,
it's so fun.
Sweet. I'll speak to you soon.
All right, bye.
Bye.